Is the FT817 or the later FT818 still a good value transceiver in 2021? This question is asked quite regularly online, and there's a number of competing models available now from other mainstream manufacturers, from Chinese manufacturers. There's a whole heap of options, but very few of them have the build quality, the reliability, and the simple operation of the FT817 or FT818. Not to mention all the bands and all modes in one single portable box. Now I'll refer to both the 817 and the 818 as the 817 here just for simplicity, but I'll cover some of the differences later. Now the first thing you realise when you pick up an 817 is it's built like a tank. These things last, and they have lasted. I can't remember the year this was originally released, but many of us are still on our original FT817s. And despite being dragged up mountains in all weather, I must say they're not waterproof, but mine has survived quite a few showers and snowstorms without any issues. But yes, they can take some abuse and still survive and still be perfectly operable. And it's really the reliability that is one of the strongest points. If you pack an FT817 in a backpack and you trek up a hill, hit the power button, you're on the air. There's no fiddling, there's no complexity involved. It's just a simple process to set up and operate. And again, talking about that simplicity, the menu system, the controls, the accessing the SWR meter, the power meter, the repeater functionality for VHF and UHF, it's all easily accessible using the function key and the front three menu buttons below the screen. If you need to dive a little deeper and set other settings, then it's all, again, easily accessible via a long press of the function key. One thing the 817 boasts that most other radios of this type don't is 2 antenna sockets. This is perhaps less use for stationary operating up a mountain or on a park bench, but the flexibility is great when mobile. You can carry the radio around your shoulder in a bag, and you can use the antenna mount on the front for convenience. We also have reasonable power consumption. Now this radio is not going to win any awards in terms of power consumption, but the power consumption is still reasonable. The internal batteries will power it for perhaps an hour, depending on the amount of listening to transmitting ratio that you're requiring. We also have a data port on the rear, which provides easy access for data modes on both HF and VHF UHF. This includes support for 9600 baud packet, which again nowadays is becoming increasingly rare. This is despite the increase in packet radio in some areas. We also have, depending on the model, around 5 watts output. Now, remember 5 watts output is only 12 or so dB down on average 100 watt radio. So in reality, people may look down on these radios as QRP, but 12 dB difference, that's only 2 S points. If someone can hear you at S9 on a 100 watt radio, that will translate to S7 on a 5 watt radio. This isn't really such a huge deal if you get the antenna correct. And my other videos will cover this. It's all down to antennas rather than the power. We also have an integrated SWR and power meter, and it can also show ALC and modulation. Again, for a radio so compact, to include all these features is just fantastic value for money. Now I will mention some negatives, and there's not many. First of all, especially on the 817, you need filters. If you're operating anything other than just a casual, occasional operator, you will need filters. If you're looking at operating on a busy band, especially if you're looking at contests on HF, you will definitely need a proper SSB filter, otherwise the front end is wide open. If you're a CW operator, again, you really need that filter, because without the CW filter, it's very, very wide. You can hear half the band. I'm not joking. But anyone that's really serious about operating will probably invest in a filter anyway. Secondly, the power socket. A lot of people have problems with the power socket. This is usually from connectors being pulled at different angles or not being removed carefully. I understand this can easily happen. Personally, I've never had a problem, despite taking the radio portable, using it as a desktop radio at home. I've never had a single problem, touch wood, with the power socket. But there's aftermarket options, including devices that convert this to a power pole externally. So it's not the end of the world. You either need to be very, very careful with the radio, or you can invest in one of these external options. Thirdly, the internal batteries, they will operate. You can get on the air using them, probably not at 5 watts for very long, but at the lower power levels, again, the difference between 1 watt and 5 watts is not huge. But if you want to operate for any length of time, you will need additional power. Whether that's a WindCamp internal lithium ion or whatever it is pack, or you take an external LiPo or gel cell, or you will need additional power for any reasonable length of operation. And by reasonable, I mean, if you're looking to operate for more than half an hour guaranteed, I would take external power. Point number 4, and this isn't really specific to this radio at all, but when you're talking about these power levels, you really need to focus on the antenna. And a lot of people don't want to hear this. They want to just dump 100 watts or 500 watts into a bit of wet string and not worry about the antenna. But at these power levels, the antenna really does matter. So you need to focus a little bit on an efficient, ideally resonant antenna. And the 5th and final point is if you're doing anything on VHF and UHF, especially if you're using sideband, and especially so if you're working satellites, you will need the temperature compensated oscillator. Now, I believe this is standard with the 818, it's optional with the 817, but very much required if you're intending to do anything with satellites. So in summary, is the FT817 or 818 still a good value transceiver in 2021? The answer is yes, of course. To get all of this in one box, which is portable, that gives you the whole of HF, the possibility to set up some Yagis on 270 and work satellites, easy connection of CW key, built-in keyer. Some of these things I've not even covered, I take them for granted. But what other radio nowadays is built so well, will still be around in 10 or 20 years' time and still be operating like new? Probably not many. In absolute terms of performance, yes, of course, more modern radios will give you better functionality, better receivers, better filters with their DSP magic. But again, if I'm hiking up a mountain and I want a radio that I know I can rely on, then the FT817 is my go-to radio. And it doesn't matter whether I'm using HF SSB, whether I'm using FT8 using a laptop, JS Call using a laptop, CW, FM with local repeaters. It's a dependable radio. So yes, don't worry about the age. In some ways, the age and the fact so many of these radios still exist is really a testament to the engineering that originally went into them. I hope that's useful. If you have any comments, or you disagree with anything I've said, or you have something else you'd like me to talk about, do leave a comment. I try and follow up on all comments. Thank you for now. This is OH3 SPN Finland.